No Jalen Hurts on Sunday means it's up to Kenny Pickett to secure the NFC East and the 2 seed. Can he do it against Dallas? We'll get into it coming up next right here on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louis DiBiase joined, as always, by Gino Camilleri, and we're brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. One more show before Eagles-Cowboys this Sunday at the Link, a 1 o'clock game. The Eagles trying to sweep the Cowboys for the first time in a long time. These teams always split. And, Gino, this one, it looks like yet again will involve at least one backup quarterback. That's always been the case. This one will involve likely two. Jalen Hurts yet again missed practice on Friday, so when that injury report does come out, I'm sure right after the show, actually, he'll be ruled out of this game, which means it's Kenny Pickett against Cooper Rush. That's kind of weird, man. Like, has it been Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott like once or twice? I mean, what a weird thing.
I was just thinking about the Brandon Boykin.
Oh, yeah,
NFC
it goes back to that
East
far. You're right.
clinching
This is always the way it is.
Kyle Orton. I'm sitting there with a couple of my buddies.
Yeah.
One of my buddies, Connor, who's an Eagles fan, and we just are sitting there and like, no way you can lose to Kyle Orton. And going into this game, even with Kenny Pickett, without CeeDee Lamb, you have to be thinking, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, no way we can lose to Cooper Rush at home yet again, with a chance to go and win the NFC East. And maybe the biggest jinx of all time was me saying that the Eagles were going to win the NFC East last year, and by the greatest downfall known to man, they lose it to none other than the Dallas Cowboys. Can that happen again, Lou? I don't think so, even without Jalen Hurts, and that is ultimately what the season is going to come down to, is getting him back healthy. But if you secure the NFC East in another game that isn't Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. I mean, we've seen the Gardner Minshew versus Dak game. We've seen the Cooper Rush game how many times? Ben DiNucci has been in the rotation as well.
You're right, though. Even going back to 2013, 2014, Mark Sanchez is the one playing in the Thanksgiving game. It's crazy how this continues.
Yes, that's what I mean. Somebody has a hex on these two starting quarterbacks, and hopefully next year it'll get back to that rivalry, because I don't think anybody in America included, hence why this game was moved off of the 4:25 America's Game of the Week spot to 1 p.m. Nobody is really in favor of seeing Cooper Rush and Kenny Pickett.
Especially now with CeeDee Lamb. You know, I will say, like, Cooper Rush, and Vic Fangio said this as well in his press conference a couple days ago, this offense looks a lot different than the last time the Eagles played Dallas in Dallas, where there's times Trey Lance is going in to run the football, and they just had no idea what they were doing. The Cowboys lately have been a little hot on offense, but it was because CeeDee Lamb was on an absolute tear with over 25 catches in the last 3 games, 100 yards in 2 of those matchups, 2 touchdowns. He's been shut down with that shoulder injury. So once that, before that, I was saying this is going to be a close game. The line moved to, I think, plus 7.5 yesterday. Before it was at 9.5, according to FanDuel. But once Lamb went down, even without Jalen Hurts, I'm like, they should handle things. As long as they're not turning the football over in their own zone, they should win this football game.
When I was going through what would it take the Eagles to win this game, even without quarterback one, what is the one thing, tried and true, that has worked and passed the test every single time for them? The offensive line and running the football. Is it going to be easy to go out there and just beat Micah Parsons every single rep? No, there's going to be plays when he wreaks havoc, and you know that. But when you are on offense, unlike last week, you got to put yourself in a good position. This is Kellen Moore play calling wise, on 1st and 2nd down, so you don't go 3 for 16 on 3rd down yet again, so you can at least get yourself into field goal range. And Jake Elliott, who now has made 1 from 50, I mean, he's got the monkey off his back here. Now they have a chance to score points if they are efficient with the football, and that comes with not turning the ball over, and that's a Kenny Pickett turnover in your own minus territory, which really broke the back of this team last week. That can't happen again. Even against Cooper Rush, who you said, Lou, this offense looks a lot more efficient. than it did the last time. They have an idea of who they are. Rico Dowdle is the clear number one there, and he's running the ball very well. He is another guy that it's going to take multiple hats to bring down. It seems like they faced physical runner every single week the last 5 or 6 weeks here, Lou.
Yeah, running back wise has been tough. Good
again,
thing Jordan Davis is not hurt too badly.
Seriously.
He'll be playing in this game because you saw the difference last game in the second half with Washington compared to the first without big number 90 in the middle. So that's going to be a huge part of this too, Gino, is without CeeDee Lamb, you know Dallas is going to try to lean on the run game. Jordan Davis is essential in that matchup.
Without a doubt, and I think Ferguson in the middle of the field, that's an area that they're going to want to get him involved in. And outside of that, Lou, do you see a Terry McLaurin beating Quinyon Mitchell in one-on-one happening with a Brandon Cooks or a Jalen Brooks this week? I don't think so.
And that's why even though the defense for Dallas has been really good lately, and Mike Zimmer throws some different pressure looks at you, and he's gonna rush Kenny Pickett. At the same time, I trust the Eagles, their personnel with a backup quarterback compared to Dallas. It's not even close right now.
And the game plan I think the Eagles have to follow is one that is opposite of what they have been doing with Jalen Hurts, where they're like, okay, Jalen, you have the freedom at the line of scrimmage. If things do go awry, you can hold on to the ball a little longer. Even though you might take a sack, we know at times you are going to be Superman and make really good things happen. You cannot think that if you are Nick Sirianni and Kenny Pickett. That would be asinine. It would be egotistical to think that. Even Doug Peterson, Lou, in the stretch of the Super Bowl run, knew that he couldn't run the offense that he was running with Carson Wentz exactly like he was doing with Wentz with Foles. He knew he had to change it up. He went back to some ideologies that worked when Chip Kelly was there. That's how you have to approach Kenny Pickett. See what works well with Kenny Pickett. He's a 1-2 read guy. Get the ball out of his hands quickly.
Play action.
Don't let him make crazy decisions. Yep, establish the run game so you can set up the play action, hit the intermediate areas with Grant Calcaterra. The check down should be his best friend.
And he can run, man, but you don't want him try to beating guys to the edge with some of these RPO and read option plays. They should not be. They should remove most of that from this playbook today or on Sunday.
I think you probably will still see elements of that, Lou, because Kenny Pickett...
He's not a statue.
That's the thing. You can still, with him, get probably 4 to 5 yards of scramble with him. It's not Jalen Hurts where you think he's going to beat a guy to the edge or he's going to run through multiple guys, but he's also not a player that you want to see the downfield throws, which take 3+ seconds to continue to work. You don't want to see that. You want to see 2 seconds, get the ball out of his hand. We're reading the middle of the field, even if it's A.J. Brown on a quick slant against Diggs, or if is Diggs injured? Right?
He's hurt, so he's not going to be in this game.
They're banged up, man. They are a team that is banged up, even though they've been playing good. You should still trust your horses, and your number one, your Seabiscuit. It's Saquon Barkley, man. Don't overthink this game plan at all. Let's establish the trenches. As good as Micah Parsons is, they still don't have an answer for stopping the run in the middle of the defense, Lou. That is something that Dallas cannot figure out. You can run the ball against them, continue to do that, and make those linebackers have to tackle. They don't have DeMarion Overshown in the middle either, who was their best linebacker.
No, Zach Martin's out on offense too. Dallas is really banged up.
You got to smell blood in the water if you're the Eagles to know that if you win this week, we could
get a bye week.
Week 18 essentially as our bye week that we didn't get because we missed out on the 1 seed because we lost that game to Washington. Here is a chance to give yourself a gift.
And I do think it's super important that Jalen Hurts gets this rest too, right? I mean, I think it's a nice blessing in disguise.
Sit him.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, just take care of business this game. It will be a blessing in disguise if they win this game. Because if not, it's very 2022, where Gardner Minshew's got a couple chances to secure that 1 seed. He doesn't do it. Jalen's got to come in. Remember, still banged up. This is different because it's a concussion, right? But he's still banged up with that shoulder injury. Comes in against the Giants, barely beats Davis Webb, I believe it was, in a Week 18 matchup. So take care of business now, and then the whole team, including Jalen, gets a bye week and some rest, which is huge because mathematically speaking, it's not over, but the Eagles are not likely to get a 1 seed. And Gino, I will say too, this makes that Pittsburgh game all the more important when you look at it, because I think they're going to win this game, and they're probably going to rest starters on Sunday against the Giants next week. And I feel like it was really good to see that performance from Hurts in the passing game before the playoffs, especially if we know now, like, this is it. This is all we've seen from Jalen in the regular season. I think it adds the importance of that last win he had before he got hurt.
It's definitely an intriguing way to look at it, because if you look at the last thing you remember prior to every time that they have entered like a deep playoff run, let's look at 2022 for example.
They were kind of limping.
That game that they were.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Tiny Tim from Christmas Carol, man, like on crutches, barely getting in there. And then 2017, the same thing. We forget about maybe the biggest discussion that doesn't get talked about is, were we going to start Nate Sudfeld in a playoff game? That was a legitimate discussion that was being had for a long time.
I feel like these are most years the Eagles make the playoffs are kind of limping in, right? I mean, 2018 and 2019, they were hot but barely got in. I mean, I even think back to like 2009, they got destroyed by Dallas for the division and then had to go right back there the following week. Even 2010, Joe Webb steals the bye week from them, and they're kind of limping heading into the matchup with Green Bay. So that's why I think that game against Pittsburgh was so good, because I think it really did build momentum and confidence in that last area you needed to feel strongly about before this run starts. And now that you know likely there's not going to be another opportunity for that, it was so huge to get that done. And Jalen looked really good against Washington, too, before he got hurt. So I think, at least from a run game perspective, so I think they're heading into the playoffs, I think, looking good at the right time. Like, I think they are peaking at the right time.
And shout out to Nick Sirianni for a lot of that, man, because it comes down to what he has been able to do to get this team ready after the bye week. And I think if there is one question to be answered in the Nick Sirianni era, and outside of that first year where they did get hot a little bit down the stretch, what happens when you have a chance to take care of business? Have you done that in the past? In 2022, you missed out on those couple games. Even with the backup Gardner Minshew, you still had a large majority of your lineup, and they failed to win those games.
And we know what happened last year. They were fumbling into the playoffs, too. That's an understatement.
They were playing hot potato, man. Like, they barely wanted to get there. So this year, Lou, what a way to just secure it, feel good about yourself going into that last week. Jalen can get healthy. A lot of the other guys can get healthy, too. Dude, I don't even care if you sign Ian Book's whole college roster that no longer plays football to play in that final game if you wrap it up this week before the last week, because why would you want to put your starters at any risk in that final game if you win? But hey, if you don't handle what you have to handle this week, you might be in that situation.
Yeah, so
unlike the last couple of years, feel good.
One other thing, too, I think Saquon Barkley might be the only starter I could think might play in that game if he can break the record against the Giants. But overall, get this win done, get the division secure, and the number 2 seed locked up so Week 18 can be a bye week heading into the playoffs. How are they going to get that done, at least on offense with Kenny Pickett? We'll get into it with LOE 3 coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
This episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, and that means you bring people together at live events. The experience is that much better, and it is the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you want to be there live for the Eagles to win the NFC East with Kenny Pickett, I know it is Kenny P, but what a fun environment that would be right after the holidays. Go to Game Time and grab yourself some tickets, or for this playoff run, grab the tickets as well. Game Time has all-in pricing. All you have to do is toggle the feature, and it'll show you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. You can even see a panoramic view of the seat without even having to click into the ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. Time now, as we always do on Fridays in segment 2, for LOE3 presented by FanDuel. Gino and I have 3-player prop bets each that we're going to put our money on for Eagles-Cowboys on Sunday, and we want you to ride with us. Let's get into it, Gino. I think with Kenny Pickett in this football game, the bets were, I think, mostly geared towards the run game, right? And I think that's justified. I think that's going to be, as you said in segment 1, that's been their bread and butter all year without Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to continue to ride the hot hand Saquon Barkley, and that helps him, too, have a chance still at breaking this Eric Dickerson record, which is crazy that it's still a possibility.
What if he just has a crazy game, breaks the record, and then you don't even have to worry about it?
What does he need? It's 268, I believe. He's got to average. He's got to get 135 a game. That's that. He's been doing it though. I mean, he's been doing that the majority of the season. Crazy.
He's
enough.
not playing next week if they win, and
no,
he's not
that
going to
I
get the
agree.
record. And
what if he's like?
That's tough.
How many yards does he have to be close to this record for them to play him? Like if he's at like 130
it's the
plus,
Giants too.
They're not going to probably. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The coolest, the most badass revenge story in the history of football might be possible. And Nick Sirianni, like, he does pay attention to this kind of stuff. And in 2021, you talked about when he rested starters, he did put Devontae Smith out there so he could break Deshaun Jackson's single-season rookie receiving yards record. I think if it's like 130 plus, even if he has a big game this week and gets that 130 plus, they would sit him. But if it's like 80, 90 yards, I don't know, man. They might just say in the first half, we're giving you the ball 20 times and let's see if you can get this done. It's going to be it's a tough juggling because you got to have him healthy for the postseason.
I legitimately think he can go for 200 in this game.
I could see that. And then he needs 60 yards next week. I think that if he has a massive game against Dallas, I think he could play week 18.
Where Washington had the guys outside, especially that are willing to tackle, and they did a good job of, in the second half especially, taking away those runs where Saquon tried to bounce it, and they were Frankie Louvu and those guys were doing a good job filling on the inside. I don't think that Dallas is going to be able to keep up for 4 quarters.
I don't think they have the bodies outside of number 11, man.
No,
they're banged up.
Yeah, you double him, and then we're having some creative runs that Stoutland's going to script together. If he's within...
like under 100, probably. If it's 110, though, I think
I think 100 is a lot. That's a lot, man. That's like a game.
Because that means he's probably playing the whole game. Yeah, it's got to be like a first half's worth of yards. Yeah, that's going to be a tough call.
65, I don't know.
Sure.
Just go for a lot this game, Saquon. That'd be
go
cool.
all in for this game. Let's take a look at our bets because we do have a couple Saquon Barkley bets here. But before we do that, we have rushing bets for other players. I have an anytime touchdown for Kenny Pickett rushing at plus 400. Gino has an anytime touchdown for Kenny G. Kenneth Gainwell at plus 470. And I like those. Gino, I still think, it's not Jalen Hurts, but if they get in the red zone and they're on the 1 or 2 yard line, they'll still try to put Kenny Pickett up the middle. So I'm still kind of banking on that one.
It's not a bad idea at all, man. They don't like to shy away from what they do best, and that is leaning on their offensive line. And like you said, even if it isn't Jalen Hurts, I still think they're going to try it. And we know every single game, put your money on it. There will be a situation where the Philadelphia Eagles are on the 1 yard line, and it's more than likely going to be at least one attempt at the tush push.
And, there's always times it feels like during the year, Kenneth Gainwell randomly gets a red zone drive where he's getting the ball. So I could see that bet too.
Dude, he's been running well, and even the times when he just gets it out in the flat. I mean, he had that one where he looked downhill, took it to the 1 yard line, almost scored last week. I think he is going to be the change-up pitch when they get into the red zone, and if you want to keep Saquon healthy, you got to continue to have another good runner in this rotation. And it's not just give Kenneth the ball because you want to give Kenneth the ball. He's been a really good football player the last.
No, I agree with that. And again, if they're going to run heavy this week, Saquon Barkley is going to be a massive part of that, of course. But I think other guys are going to be involved too. So I like those bets. Our second ones though do involve Saquon Barkley. I have the alt rushing yards of 125 plus. For the game, that's at plus 135. Gino has a Saquon Barkley parlay that includes an anytime touchdown, and he's going to surpass 100 rushing yards. That's at minus 105. So yeah, Gino, again, I think this is the game they go heavy on giving him a chance to break the record. And it's not just that. They still need this football game to get the division and the 2 seed. So with Kenny Pickett in this football game, they're going to want to control the clock, time of possession. They're not going to want to turn the ball over. How do you do that? Offensive line, number 26.
The odds on a Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown were around minus 225, which is a lot to put down.
Yeah.
But if you parlay that with him going over 100 yards, it's
a little
way
more
to
bang
bring
for
it
your
up
buck.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But the way you have to look at the Saquon anytime touchdown is whatever your favorite number is at the roulette table that you always put money down no matter what. That it's just mindless. It's whenever they clear the table, the next round's up, I put it on 24. Me and my wife, that's our number. Always on 20. Saquon, put it on 26. I definitely am throwing that in the rotation from now on. That's how you have to approach Saquon Barkley scoring. And
Gino was just a really big fan of Ryan Matthews growing up back in the day,
no,
so that's why he's 24.
That's disgusting.
Corey Graham. My bad.
I did live below his brother. That is
You did.
for sure. Yes.
All right, let's take a look at those third bets. I have an under bet for Cooper Rush, which is his passing yard total at 194.5. That's at minus 114. I like that with CeeDee Lamb out of this game. And then Gino is backing up number 4, Jake Elliott, a kicker bet, total kicking points at over 6.5. Elliott finally hit a 50-plus yarder. And, Gino, I like this one. We got to get Jake Elliott going because they need him for the playoffs. This is an underrated story that there's years where me and you both say, that could come back to bite them, and then it does in a big spot. And I feel like if there was one thing I have to say could bite them in the playoffs, at one point it was maybe the passing game. Now I don't believe that. It might be Jake Elliott's kicking, so they need him to get going here.
Even though you are going to be outdoors, well, that's where they're going to be playing their playoff games, man. This one is an injury world where you get the benefit of the doubt being inside, and Jake Elliott has been money this last game, but before that, he was out of sorts. And who is he going to be? I'm going to ride with number 4 because I just don't trust Kenny Pickett a ton, and I think they're going to be in field goal range a lot, but probably not convert a lot of touchdowns unless it's an explosive Saquon play, some sort of Kenneth Gainwell play, and they'll probably have 1 or 2 explosive plays downfield to their wide receivers, seemingly because of the matchups that they do have. They have to like their one-on-one threats in this game as well.
LOE3 is always presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll wrap up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles coming up next. This episode of Locked On Eagles is sponsored by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, they're offering more than 40 free online courses, including the Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, wrapping up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Just 2 more regular season games for the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles before the playoffs. This season has absolutely flown by, and they need one more win to secure the 2 seed and the division. Of course, we know what the expectations are for this football team. They have a 10-game win streak before last week's loss. Both sides of the ball have been elite for the majority of the year. Gino, I am interested, what is your mindset, because we're getting close to the playoffs, when you compare it to, 2022, 2023, even some of the past runs? Where is your mindset with this team versus those teams? Is it a culmination of the last 3 years where you're saying they got to get this one done, it's Super Bowl or bust? Or is it, do you feel like this is just the first of many runs? Where is your head at with this team's run specifically in this year's window?
Ooh, that is such an interesting question.
If they, and then I'm not saying I'm not trying to go a negative approach. If they lose in the second round, I'm just trying to I came up with this because I'm thinking about how I'm preparing for this playoff run emotionally. If they make it to the divisional round or the NFC title, but don't make it to the Super Bowl, where's my head at with this year's team? I'm kind of interested to see how people think about that.
You definitely have to put context around not just the Eagles, but the entire state of what is going on in the NFC. And if you look at what the NFC was...
It's part of why I was thinking about this,
back in 2022, you're not going to get that first-round Daniel Jones game. That's not going to happen. You're either going to play Jordan Love and the Packers, who you played earlier in the season, but you think they're going to want to get a little bit of revenge on you for that loss. That's going to be a tough game. Washington, the team that you just lost to in a shootout, that's going to be another tough one as well. And then after that, now you have to think about maybe you play that Minnesota team or a Detroit team who's that number 5 seed or
the Rams who are red hot.
Who knows, man? This is not an easy NFC, but at the same time, looking at the Eagles, you should expect that they at least should be in an NFC championship game, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm not going to be... And again, I think this team can win it all. And I think they have the best chance of anybody in the NFC. And they've beaten the Commanders. Like, it's a really good conference this year in the middle tier, right? But they've beaten the Commanders. They've beaten the Packers. They've beaten the Rams. So we know they can beat all these football teams that they potentially could play. But yeah, I kind of go back and forth with it. You never want to say there's going to be more runs because things change in the NFL so quickly, and this team does have free agents. And me and you have seen how this team, things can change very fast. But it does feel more sustainable this year, as we've discussed on the show before, where it does feel like this isn't just one window they have to get done. So I kind of go back and forth. Like, I'm with you. They should at least make it to the NFC title, and I think they can get to New Orleans. I would not be happy if they lose in the first or second round. To me, they got to at least get to the Final Four. But yeah, I don't know if they don't end this year with a ring, I'm going to say, well, that's it. Like, there's significant change that has to be done. You got to remember how young, I don't want to use that as an excuse and set that up, right? It's not what I'm doing here, but they're a really young football team, and it's kind of exciting that this is, even though some of these guys were on the run of the last 2 years, a lot of these guys, this is the first one, and there's so many of those players on this core that it is their first time.
And the thing you said to intro this question was, is this the first of a run? And when I heard that question, all I could think of was the early 2000 years, where it was like,
that's kind of part of what I was thinking about.
You were growing this young core together that was just able to sustain success with a good head coach and a defensive coordinator who was his right-hand man.
Right.
And you had these core foundational pieces on defense, which were among the best in the league, and they were so young. And they were draft picks, and they were homegrown. And yeah, they were the occasional free agent signing from time to time, but you had your quarterback, you had a great running back, you had a great offensive line, you did not have the receivers you did, you have a defense that's on par with that. That should be what we look at this window as, and I would even include going back to 2022 as the start of that.
Yeah, see, that's my thing is, because even 2022... you knew how many free agents were. That felt like a more sustainable team than after 2017, right? Because that was one of the oldest teams in football.
Exactly.
You knew you had Carson Wentz, and at the time you felt like that was going to keep the window open. But the roster itself, you didn't know the future of that. 2022, there were a ton of free agents. You didn't know the future of that. I agree with you that that was kind of the start for a lot of these guys, but you could almost consider 2024 the start of a new window in a way too, because it's such a different team even from the last 2 years.
Point,
so I think that's exciting, and I'm not trying to set up that I think they're going to lose in the first or second round, but I see a really good conference. This is going to be a heated playoff. You don't have a bye week. It's going to be tough. So I was just trying to think with the landscape where my head's at heading into this postseason run.
I feel a lot better about the state of this team than I did after that Eagles Super Bowl team in 2017.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I agree.
Even though we were thinking we could go back-to-back with this team, we weren't saying, this team's going to compete for Super Bowls in the year 2025.
In 5-6 years, these guys are still here doing that. Right, exactly.
You could see Quinyon Mitchell still being here and Jalen Carter still being here.
Nolan Smith.
Was it like the first year of Chip a little bit, maybe, outside of Michael Vick to a degree, where you did have a lot of those foundational young pieces, and maybe if it does stay together, if that Jamoke doesn't send his entire offense away, you have different discussions. But yeah, there were some pieces on defense too that you could get into there, but you've never really had this type of young core on both sides where outside of Lane Johnson and Slay, who is old? Who's old on this team?
Brandon Graham was, and he got hurt. So it's really up to the new era of Eagles football. And that's the thing is, I've never experienced this as a coherent Eagles fan, because even 2022 is kind of a hybrid of like the end of the previous era, right? And then kind of the start of the new one. This one, like you said, it's Lane and Slay from that past core, but that's it. Like, this is a brand new team going on a run. So at the same time, I think they got to at least make it to the Final Four. The way you do that, win the division this week, get home field advantage throughout the majority of the playoffs, grab that number 2 seed, and then rest your guys week 18. We'll get into the matchup after the game, of course, for the Locked On Eagles postgame show. Eagles-Cowboys now at 1 o'clock on Sunday, and then we've got a whole nother week of shows for you, getting you ready for the Giants and the playoffs. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. We're going to sign off for now. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase. Thanks, as always, for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.